Hi and welcome everyone. Thank you all for finding the time and visiting today's webinar. My name is Alona Borzemska. I'm the CCO of the Domain Crawler, and I will be the host of today's webinar, which is all about uncovering the importance and understanding of the Know Your Customer behavior for the domain industry operators. The reason why we decided to conduct this webinar is that the data still is and will keep on being the most important and like the leading driver for the business success. And on our side, by indexing the web, we're clearly seeing the importance and the value of placing registries, registrars at the pulse of their customer use, and like the use of the domain names in general, as it enables them to be proactive in mitigating churn rates, increase the lifetime value of the customer, and just compare with the peers. So we hope today's webinar will bring more perspective into this topic. We will also try to cover that during the Q&A session. So in case you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to put it into the chat, and we will make sure to answer that during the presentation and Q&A session. And I see we have some people joining us today. Yes, and yeah, this webinar will be recorded, and I'm reading the question, will be recorded and available by the end of this week. So, and while people are still joining, feel free to say hi in the chat, introduce you, where you're coming from, industry, company, maybe country. So we'll see if we can find any familiar names and faces. And that was also would help us to address some topics and issues more specifically in our presentation. So I'm looking forward to that. And while you are doing, while you're introducing yourselves, I will be happy to introduce our speakers today, as we have two great experts from the field that would cover the subject of the webinar today. I will start with Rickard. Rickard Vikström, he is the founder of the Domain Crawler, and Rickard is a real expert when it comes to the hosting, domain names, ID security, and all of the things regarding that. Over the years of his career, Rickard has been involved as the board member and the founder of many companies, including the cyber companies, for example, Stay Secure, Home Security, Internet Vikings, and Domain Crawler. We also have Danny Aerts joining us today. And Danny has over 3 decades of experience in the IT sector, having spent previous 15 years as the CEO at Swedish Industry Foundation, Internet Stiftelsen. I was practicing a little bit with pronouncing that, and I hope no one of the Swedish people not offended. So I did a good job pronouncing that. So that's that. Yeah, I don't see any introductions in the chat. So it's either we have some delay with the speakers, or I'm sorry, with the participants, or they are too shy to share their information and where they're coming from. So maybe that will appear later on. I don't know. We'll see. So before we start, I just want to do a little bit of the housekeeping. So our time will be split in 2 parts. The first 20 minutes of the webinar will be dedicated to the presentation that Rickard will deliver about the industry highlights, covering the topic. And the next part will be the Q&A session, that more interactive session together with Danny, who will share his experience on the topic as well. And we have some questions that were sent to us beforehand, so we'll try to answer them on the one hand, and we will also try to cover the questions that will appear in the chat as well. So I think I did all of the housekeeping and everything regarding that, and now without the further ado, I think, Rickard, the floor is yours. I'm more than happy to listen to your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Alona. And thank you, everyone, for being here. Also, thank you, Danny, for joining. And I see that we now have a lot of people writing. So we have Frank from Canada, Marie-Eve from Canada. We also have people from Denmark, from Belgium, all over the world, from Florida. So a lot of people from all over the world and a lot of familiar names from the industry. So really looking forward to everything. And like Alona said during the presentation, please ask questions. Just write in the chat, and me and Danny can answer it as we go. Or if you have any comments and debate any of the data. But really looking forward to today. So let's jump to the presentation. So what we will be talking today is about first of all about transparency and visibility within the industry. We will also talk about the lifetime value and what that means as a domain registrar, domain registry, and domain reseller. Business continuity. We will see and track end customers in between registrars and resellers. We have what we call the influx case. It's a lot of domain names that was registered, but I will get back to that later on. Also what we call look beyond a registrar and a reseller. What kind of data points is used for that? And then also upselling. I have a few interesting data points there to see different registrars. Take the next slide. But coming back to like the basics, what is transparency and why is it important within the domain name industry? It's, in my opinion, it's all about visibility and be able to have we have so much data, and there is that can be used to see what is happening within either your the zone files you're working within. You can also see registries you're working within. You can also see it within your business or your peers. But for me, it's back to business continuity, to handle abuse. Of course, a lot of people are already doing that. But in the end of the day, it's building a sustainable company. And I will come back to that a little bit later on. And what we are starting to see, and we have covered this before, is the marketing and sales efforts that can be used with the transparency, with the data that's available to every registrar, every reseller, and every registry. What's our market share? How to increase it? What can we do in terms of marketing? And in the end of the day, it's about improve the enterprise value of your company and have the business continuity. Next one. And I think that comes back to lifetime value. LTV is something within especially the SaaS industry, the software as a service. All companies talk about LTV. And it's not that common within the domain name industry, but I really want to put it out there that this is something everyone should track. And how I would look at it in the sales process, if you, for example, are a big registrar working with resellers, when you are looking to onboard, you met a reseller at a conference or outreached to someone, how can we implement checks in the sales process so that the reseller, when you start selling to that reseller, do you know what's the renewal rate? How can you do discounts based on renewal rates and have that already done, so you don't onboard a reseller with 100,000 domain names, and then after a few years you start saying, okay, the renewal rates aren't what I was looking for. These discounts aren't so good. There's a lot of abuse. There's a lot of support going into this reseller. And looking at problematic resellers, be able to communicate with them with data points, with statistics. This is the industry average, and this is the kind of renewal rate, the kind of churn, the kind of cases we have with you. And I would also put into the reseller agreement to have tiered pricing depending on the renewal rates. Because in the end, you want your resellers that have a lot of resellers that have great renewal rates, that like 80, 90%. Those are the ones you should give discounts to, not the one that have 20% renewal rate the first year. And this is actual data. And I was looking through a few of our data points for .se registrars. This is renewal rate for domain names that has been registered for the last 7 years. So the data point is when the month when the domain name was registered. And if you look at this particular, it's a registrar that also have a lot of resellers. In 2018-19, they had like between 20 and 30% renewal rate the first year. It's not good. You don't want to, like, they probably had some bad resellers that just bought a lot of domain names and then churned it. But probably this reseller fixed it during 2020, removed those resellers, and their renewal rate the first year increased. And if you look at the second year, the blue line, they have had a good renewal rate. So it's probably one reseller that bought a lot of domains, dropped it directly after a year for some reason. So this is the kind of data that I think everyone should monitor, look into, and also compare your reseller, your registrar, also your registry against other registries, other registrars, and such, or resellers. So it's really interesting data, and to put this on top of each other, like with different registrars. Let's go to the next one. And we call this. You want to add something on it? The slide.
Let's say if you go back to the slide before this one. Hi everybody, my name is Danny Aerts. I used to be the CEO of the Swedish registry.se. The last time we had a webinar, we talked quite a lot on lifetime value and the strong increase of the lifetime value of a domain name in relation to when it passes the first renewal moment, the first year, where if you increase it from 50, 60 to 70, 80%, you nearly double the lifetime value. But the message we have here today is that from a registry point of view, normally resellers are a black box. We don't know. The registry doesn't know who is behind the registrar normally, and you don't know which resellers they get or they lose, and if the reseller turns up somewhere else. But when we look at the data in detail and we can analyze it, you can see that in some years registrars have quite a lot of problems on the sales and the renewal rate, and then the problems disappear, but they start somewhere else. And you can see that depending on which reseller is connected to which registrar, you can see a pattern of improved or decreased quality. And if you go to the next slide, where we talk about the health check process, what we mean with this is that normally where you do health checking, or you make a balance, or you give information on the registrars, you look at, okay, how much do they sell, and what is their renewal rate, and what is their abuse rate. But it's also interesting to start to look at the quality level of their resellers and include that in some sort of health check process. What I mean is that registries, the more sophisticated registries, work more and more with reporting, where you have KPIs. You look at the different registrars and you look at how they perform on quantity, on renewal, on money, maybe on support issues, but I don't know how many registries actually track the quality of the resellers. And that would be interesting, just as a question to the audience. How many actually have, from the registry side, a clear picture who are the resellers of this registrar? So that's just...
But then I totally agree that it's a very valid point that not many have been doing those kind of investigations. I don't know why, because it's the information is out there, the information is public. You can't do it by looking at name servers. I will come back to that a little bit later, but the data is there. And I totally agree with you in terms of reporting. And like I put here in the presentation, these KPIs, they should be on a management report. They should be on board reports. This is something you should take. If I would be responsible for the registry side, the technical registry side, or registry manager, I will take this information, show it to my my colleagues on the management team and board reports, and follow up every month, because this is not something that's static, that you can do a check every year. You need to do it on a monthly basis. And I see a few comments in the chat that yes, there's a lot of resellers that are not the same, and the web developers, they are the ones that usually have nice renewal rates. There's like 80-90%, but those are the ones that you should do discounts to, not to the ones that just churn and burn domain names. And I also agree, name servers are not one-to-one to a reseller. I agree. I will show a little bit more data on that later on. In the G2, approximately 25% of the market is non-registrar hosted. Most of those are resellers. That 100%. And those are the resellers that every registry should know about. Totally agree. And we can go to the next slide, please. And this is, we call it the influx case. It is 9,000 domain names, approximately 9,000 domain names that was registered during the fall of 2022 under the .se zone. It's been shared between two registrars. I don't know if they actually know about each other on this case. There is like very non-favorable content on all these domain names. It's like mobile landing pages. It looks like phishing. It's very, it doesn't do any good for the .se zone file, to say the least. And let's go to the next slide so I can show a little bit how we found it, because we were looking at on similarities between registrars, and we saw these domain names. So it's all numeric domain names. These are some examples. They all have Let's Encrypt, SSL certs. And this one is on registrar.eu. Again, it's probably a reseller they have that have registered all these domain names. And you see it's on the same, more or less the same hosting IP address. They have the same kind of SSL certificate, but the CN subject for the SSL is different domain names, which kind of strange that they made that kind of mistake. And all these domain names were registered after September the 1st last year, but not the same date. It was like spread out a little bit in September up to December. So this is what we saw on registrar.eu, and if we take the next one, we see exactly the same thing on the API registrar. We see the same thing with Let's Encrypt as a self-certificate. There is a bit different in terms of name servers. Some are on Cloudflare, some are on DNS.com, some are on domain control. Also, where the domain names are hosted is a bit different. But if we look at it on a broader picture, there is a lot of similarities between these domain names. And it was pushed out during the same time. It pushed into the zone during the same time. And this is something, if I would be a registrar, I used to have a registrar before. If I would be a registrar, I would like to know that I'm not the only one having these kind of this end customer that's doing this. I would like to say, okay, there's other ones that have the same thing. Because let's say 10 years ago, we saw a lot that people registered 10,000 domain names one day, used it. Now they spread it out. Do a longer period of time. They do drop catching. They do other things. Just so you can't just see this is one type of registration happening one time. You need to be much more sophisticated in your research. But there is ways to automate these kind of reports to find the similarities.
A question, Rickard, from my side. Let's say if you say you as a registrar would be interesting to know if something similar happens in other registrars, how do you see that? Is the registry the one that informs you, or friends in the registrar community say, we have something going on here? What do you mean?
Yeah, no, but for registry, of course, should be the one to have that kind of close relationship with the registrars. But not all registries do that. And I would say that this should be something that is flagged from the BI team, the abuse team, the monitoring team within the registrar. And it's not that you need to have a team that sits and work on it. You can do all these similarity checks between all the registrars automated to monitor this, so it doesn't be so it's not any extra load to the organization.
Would be interesting to know if registries give this type of alerts to registrars. Let's say the way I see it is, if you have a good monitoring system that gives this type of information, you could give the registrars early alerts on a type of registration that you see.
Yeah, absolutely. Also looking at not only for one registry, this could be the same. Like with this, we only check.se, but it could be that it's the same in Denmark. It's the same in Germany. It's the same in Netherlands. It's the same in the UK. Same kind of pattern. Same kind of end user doing some landing pages.
There's a question: do registrars even have security teams? I would say yes.
Yeah, there's usually a CISO, but probably more focused on the security of the registry than the actual registration and the health of the zone, right? That's my view on it, but yeah, they do. Let's go to the next slide, please. Looking at looking beyond the registrar and reseller, there were a question about this before. Yes, it is possible. You can't just look at one data point. You need to use multiple data points usually to group the information. And I have an example here on the next slide. I look at on mdphoto.sk. It's one random domain name I picked. The reason why I was looking at the MX record and trying to find why can't I find the web support MX records for the domain names. That's because every domain name have the unique Unix MX record. Then we need to look at other things. We need to look at the TXT record, which is similar. It's not all identical, but we can parse it and we can see on the include that it's similar. We, of course, looked at the NS data. We can look at the MX record, but it's not. Then we need to use a wildcard to gather the information. SSL certificate, Let's Encrypt can't be used standalone to find a reseller. A record and quad A record is a signal that, of course, can be used. It's one of the most easy and the oldest one. And if I would do a research on this, I would find the similarities and group them by the different, the most common data source, and who have DNS, A record, quad A, and TXT record together. Then I can say, okay, all these are related to this registrar or this reseller. And you can do this with I've seen like 100 domain names, like resellers with like 100 domain names and above. That's usually how the kind of resellers you can find with it. So it's a very powerful tool. You can't do it by one data point, but if you use 2, 3, you have a very good accuracy. Let's go to the next one. So talking about another thing, about upselling, also a perfect way to use the data to do sales and marketing, because that's what everyone wants to do, like have a sustainable business that grows steadily in either quicker than the industry or in relation to the industry. We did a small comparison here between 3.se registrars to see who had what domains had an SSL certificate, and also who had the same domain name registered under .com. And there were quite a few some differences between the registrars. I thought it's going to be more similar. Looking at the SSL certificate, if I would be one API, I would probably see, okay, how can I sell more SSL certificate to my customers? And if I would be name SRS, I would look at why aren't we having more .com domain names, like selling more .com domain names to our customers? Because there is just like it's under 50% that's registered, comparing to one API where it's like 78%, which I think is quite a lot. Mm-hmm. So this is just some small numbers. This could be done with SSL certificate, looking at Let's Encrypt compared to non-Let's Encrypt SSL certificates to drill down the information even further.
Yeah, and I just want to comment, like the SSL certificate, that is the easiest thing, right, to upsell. So that is like, you have the data, you are selling this product, and just by understanding how, like what percentage of your customer base are using this SSL certs, what types of the SSL certs, you can very easily sell this product.
Exactly.
But what you've done here, Rickard, is that, for instance, Lupia could have a customer that has a .se, but they don't have the same customer when they, let's say the same customer could have registered a .com somewhere else with another registrar.
No, we actually checked that it's not registered anywhere.
Okay.
So that it's not in the .com fund.
Mm.
So coming to the conclusion, what we are looking at here and what we see we can do is that also looking at it's important to use the data to monitor and compare trends between resellers, between zones, between languages, between the different filtering opportunities within the global internet, to find, okay, are we doing something that's according to industry standard? Are we doing anything that's better, or not? Same thing with monitor change activities. Okay, what's happening with your domain name? We talked about this in the last webinar, to see when there's a change, how to track it, and how to funnel that into a marketing, like a marketing campaign, as one example, to help the customer to upsell with SSL, with new domain names, with premium mail servers, and so on. Also, identify churn risks. If someone is not using a domain name, there is no redirect, for example, on a ccTLD to a gTLD. That's something that directly is a churn risk, and that end user should do a redirect from the local ccTLD to the main website, or set up a local landing page. Same thing with understand your reseller business and try to support them to be like more efficient with data. Also see, okay, what can we do to have a higher renewals to increase the revenue for that reseller, and also get less support and abuse. So you find work with the right resellers in the right way.
If I can comment on something that was said in the chat, which is interesting.
Yep.
It says that ccTLDs are becoming stronger, as the way I translate this, and that customers more and more only do a registration in the local ccTLD, not even bother to do a .com, because they focus on the local market. Yes and no. Yes, there's a trend that ccTLDs are becoming stronger, but still, I would say it's in the interest of the customer and even of the registrar that they should do a defensive registration of a couple of the larger gTLDs to avoid that somebody does it instead of you, and that you might have a problem later on with reputation risk or abuse or other things. So there is, even if the customer doesn't understand it from the beginning and is totally focused on the local market, I think there's a need to make sure that you have several registrations and several TLDs.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope that was a good answer to the question from the audience. I see someone is typing. I see if there is other. No, but there is a currently of a strong ccTLD uptake, but we also see that this could be related that big registrars within those markets can do a better job of selling gTLDs. Comparing like Sweden and Germany, there is like, I think it's 40% .se domain is registered less compared to .coms. And look at the same thing in Germany, it's like 20%. It's so much less German .com domain names than compared to .de. So it's these are an opportunity, I would say, if I would be a large registrar in Germany, as one example. So, okay, how can we help our German customers also do defensive registration for .coms or a registration for .com if they want to go into new markets? Or maybe not .coms, it could be .ch, it could be .at instead. Yeah.
But what we did for this seminar was compared to the last one was doing quite a lot of analysis on the reseller level, just to see how blind the registry is and how easy it could be to follow a reseller, even if a reseller would use several registrars to do bulk registrations. Is it easy to find the reseller or not, or is it possible to follow a reseller from one registrar to the other one? Just if you find a reseller that is not working properly and you shut them off through one registrar, can you find them quickly in the other, through another registrar? Rickard, what was your conclusion after doing the analysis?
No, but and I would say yes. And just looking at this case we had with these numeric domain names, this was a typical when someone tried to hide between two registrars. Next time, it won't be two. It will probably be like 10, 20, 30 registrars, because they want to hide and not show what they're doing. But in the end of the day, there is ways to find it, to see it. We did it just because we are monitoring the zone, see what's going on. And I think the registrars and the registries that should do it as well, because it's should be their core business.
Another thing that's happening now in the market is that if you go back maybe 10 years, then you would typically find one registrant doing a mass registration of 10,000 domain names in a similar way on one day. It's like bang. And it's easy to see because the new sales figures go up extremely during the day. Now people have become more sophisticated and they know that there's much more abuse monitoring. So what they do is they use several registrars, several resellers, several days just to hide it. So it's
several TLDs also.
Yeah, and it becomes more and more, let's say, on the other side has to be more sophisticated to see the pattern, to see what's happening, instead of just looking back and say, okay, we could have found this a month ago.
You should have found it a few hours after it happened.
Okay, there's a remark in the chat.
This is interesting information. I haven't done this check personally, but it's and I can very much see that that the CCTLDs are increasing in terms of value and in terms of volume, because also it's harder to find a .com domain name. It's harder to register it because someone else probably already own it, so on and so forth. And therefore, either CCTLD, but also the new TLDs, .tech, cloud, shop, XYZ, so on and so forth.
Okay.
Shall we go to the questions?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Rickard. Thank you, Danny, for the presentation and sharing your thoughts. So as I said, we had a couple of the pre-submitted questions. We can cover a couple of them right now. So the first one is, why are more registrars not participating in blockchain domains, specifically Handshake? So the blockchain was a very popular topic last year during the Cloud Fest, and then NamesCon. Rickard, Danny, would you like to cover that as well?
I can be a grumpy old man here. Let's say what we're talking about is, as people are discussing, and now and then it happens where somebody has this bright idea of a new technical solution that would be an alternative for something that has been a part of the critical internet infrastructure. If you have a nice technical solution, that's one thing. But then again, you have to start with, let's say, why should a company or an enterprise be interested in a blockchain domain? How easy is it to find it? Who is going to market blockchain? Is a registrar going to invest in it? Are they going to make money on it? Who to call when you have a problem? So you talk about, is it more secure? So the whole, from a customer perspective, you see, why should you be interested? Is it more secure? Is it more robust? Do I get better support? Is it cheaper? And is it easy to buy? Is it easy? So the basic things that make a nice idea problematic is that, let's say, normally it takes quite a lot of effort and money to start to market and sell something new as an alternative for something that has been around for 30 years and actually doesn't cost that much, and you have a good relationship with some organization that sells it. So nice but naive, I would say, and that's why it's just experimental.
Okay. Thank you, Danny. And we have a lot of comments regarding this topic in the chat, following up your answer. So one of them is that there are no blockchain domains. The same old truth concept with the new dress. That's one.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's just a new way to find, okay, how to set up a new root servers to make money.
And there is another comment. Yeah, the market for 2023 has changed. The .com has had one of its worst years for some time, and the focus now is on reducing deletions and accelerating development. There are some more large deletions due for Q1 2023 in .com, and blockchain is at the moment a bit of a diversion. That is a little bit of the insight in the .com, right? That's interesting.
Yeah.
And just that back in the day, the old truths realized that there was more money in registering popular typos from the DNS queries than they were.
Probably true. But
yeah. I think, I see that someone is tapping, so we can come back to that later. But we have another question from the audience.
I think we
covered that. So if we go to the next one, what tools and solutions should you invest in to better protect register services against fraudulent malicious users? And those tools?
And I wouldn't just say against fraudulent and malicious users. To know what's going on in your registrar or in your zone file. It's not only for abuse, it's for marketing, it's for an understanding of what you are working with on a daily basis. And there is, because if you look at this question, it would only be abuse monitoring tools, but there's so much more that a registrar or registry can work with than just the abuse side of business intelligence. So there's tools like, again, of course, domain crawler, but also peers to domain crawler, and other tools that just collect this data and make it visible, comparable between either a registry per se or spread on different registries. And then you can import that data into either BI tools like Power BI, Tableau, and similar, or use it as a standalone.
It comes back to the webinar we had last time, is where you see that there's been so much focus on discussions on abuse. If you go to ICANN meetings, it's all about abuse. And what you see is that organizations are investing in business intelligence to improve abuse monitoring, but actually they're not investing that much in the nice part, in trying to invest in how to find new customers and how to increase the lifetime value and how to monitor the quality of incoming sales from registrars. And I think the message we had last time is you have to invest on that part also, not only focus all your money on the negative control aspect of abuse monitoring.
Yep,
Yeah.
totally agree.
And we have the following one. How can registries and registrars verify their customers without undue burden or cost? Should this verification fall to registries or registrars or both? What's in it for them and what's in it for the end users?
And I can start with this from a registrar's point of view. No, I wouldn't say it's a burden or a cost, because in the end of the day, you want long-term customers. To build a valuable company, to have a sustainable company that you will have not only for 12 months, but for the next 10, 15, 20 years, you need to work with customers that will stay with you for a very long time. Otherwise, you don't have a sustainable business. So you don't see it as a burden or a cost, see it as a necessary to build that long-term company. From a registrar standpoint. I don't know, Dana, do you have anything on the registry side you want to add to it?
Let's say the whole aspect of quality and verifying, controlling there's been year after year more politics involved, where you put more and more pressure on the registry being able to guarantee quality or correct data. And so there's more a burden on the registry to make sure that they verify and the data is accurate, if you want it or not. And so you can't just say, well, I'm not doing it, or it's a burden, or I don't want to do it. It's right now in the situation we are, is you have to do it if you want it or not. So you can't be blind and say it's the responsibility of the registrar, which it is, but it doesn't help you if it happens. So it's not so much what's in it for you. It's to keep your trust and keep being the one that keeps the responsibility and has the opportunity to make sure that you live up to your responsibility in your local market.
Yeah.
Correct. And I think we have a following up comment in the chat regarding that. I think that the person, I don't see the names, unfortunately, so sorry for not saying who said that directly. I think that there is a legal risk, though, too, in being too proactive against fraud for registrars. While quality matters, the more you automatically verify, the more you can be considered responsible for what slips by.
That is true, but maybe you shouldn't block it. Maybe you should monitor it, see what's going on, to take active decisions on it. Because it's for me, it comes back to making active decisions with the information that you have at hand, instead of not having any information at hand and not being able to take active decisions. And I also want to comment that VeriSign doesn't have any incentives for renewals for registrars, only for new registrations. That might be so, but again, looking at building business value and what we have seen for the last 5 years, 10 years in the industry, there's been a lot of M&A activities. You will never be able to sell your domain registrar or hosting company if you don't have a good renewal rate. And with the market, that we see that there is so much M&A opportunities out there, that's something that every business owner, every shareholder should be looking at.
I just want to comment one more time on this proactiveness and if you consider it more responsible. Let's say the message is more that you should be aware, you should know what's going on. Then you can have a discussion internally with your legal people in what way to react. But it starts with not being blind.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very well said. So it is important, like, to be proactive in all of those actions, as it costs less than to be reactive to the changes and to the bad things that might happen, like to the business and to all of this.
Because what I can remember from when I was in the business, then let's say if you're not blind, and then you can have a discussion, a very good fruitful discussion internally, where you say, okay, these are the different cases we see. How should we react? And then you can have a serious discussion with the legal people, and the CEO can take, in the end, a risk assessment.
Yeah. Now we have the comment that makes sense. Being aware is always good. So that's nice that we clarified that. And I think, like, we can go on and on because the topic is really interesting, but we are quite limited in time, unfortunately. So I just wanted to say thank you to all of the speakers, like to Rickard, to Danny, for your time and for sharing all of the insights, experience from the industry, from the from all of that. So thank you for joining as the speakers today with us. And I wanted to say thank you for all of the participants of this webinar. We really appreciate you coming, and thank you for the live conversation in the chat, for all of your questions. We will make sure to send you the recording of this webinar by the end of the week with the slides shared today. And in case you have any questions regarding that, feel free to reach out to us. I will put down the email in the chat box. So whenever you have a question, feel free to drop us a message. And in case you'd like to know how Domain Crawler does that, we always happy to share how we do the reporting and the data analysis for the registries and the registrars. So I guess that's it for today. Thank you, everyone. Follow us on social media, on LinkedIn, Facebook, and stay tuned for the upcoming events that we plan in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Really, really good conversations.